a couple of issues, so bunions, and another question that came up, which is what to do once you've acknowledged the emotional issues causing your physical problems. So first of all, what is a bunion? A bunion is a musculoskeletal condition that affects your feet, and especially the big toe joint. So if you imagine my hand is my foot, my thumb is the big toe, it's when you start to get that bony growth on that kind of knuckle of the big toe. And what it is, it's a response to the physical pressure, and the bone reacts and it grows in response to that physical pressure. Now, what's really interesting with bunions is I often, when I see someone with a bunion, I actually go up higher and I look at their hip, because usually hip weakness causes the whole lower limb to turn inwards a little bit and pronate the foot and cause more pressure on that bunion. So because we're going to be talking more about the emotional aspect, I will cover the foot and the bunion itself, which is across this area of the foot, the ball of your foot. As I said, all the chakras are represented in the feet, the hands, and the face. And this area is your heart chakra. And your big toe is your thinking toe. Now, it can have a lot to do with being too hard on yourself and literally, putting that pressure inwards on yourself. Remember when we talk about heart stuff, it's around love, conditional, unconditional love, acceptance, and the shadow of it is resentment. And the other issue that can come up is emotionally is making decisions that restrict you from growth and expansion. And again, feet is around not moving forwards in that direction or standing your ground or feeling grounded, especially with the feminine aspect of intuition, creativity, and emotional expression. And relationships is really big as well. Now, you can also get what's called a bunionette. It's not the female version of a bunion. It's it comes out on the little toe on the outside bit. And the little toe is your communication toe. So if you do have bunions, have a think about that, about being hard on yourself in relation to the heart stuff, being hard on your inner self, and look at the stability situation around how you feel in your relationships. But just go up a little bit further, and usually if you find a good holistic physical therapist, they should be looking outside of where your pain is, not just focusing on your foot. And then you might have to do that work, and the primary issue is dealing around the issues or lack of support that you might feel with relationships in life. So that's my interpretation of the bunion, and I'll go into the second question was, we're talking a lot about emotions causing physical issues in the body, and then people go, oh yeah, okay, cool, so you're telling me all these emotions that are going on, I get it, I resonate with it, but what the hell do I do with it now? Now, pain is very much tied in with emotions, and what I mean is, for example, there can be two people that have the exact same low back injury, but one's a 1 out of 10 and the other person's a 12 out of 10, and the person that is 1 out of 10 may never have had any experience of back pain, and it may not affect their livelihood in terms of their work. They can still work with a little bit of back pain, and their parents were healthy. Whereas the person with the 12 out of 10 pain may have had a parent in a wheelchair who had multiple surgeries and really just went downhill. And maybe they're in the building industry and they're in heavy labour, and so now how are they going to do their work because their back is so sore, they're fearing that they need surgery, they've already got in their mind the worst case scenario, they don't want to end up in a wheelchair, so there's so much more fear around it and therefore more pain. But I talk all about how emotions get stored in our tissues, and this is if they don't get expressed or they get suppressed. So why do emotions get stuck in tissues? It's either because we don't know how to express emotion, and that could be because we were brought up in a family with parents who weren't comfortable with certain emotions. So, I often talk about anger or sadness or grief, any of the emotions, but it may not have been allowed to be expressed for you because they were uncomfortable with it. Or one common thing that happens with grief is that it's not great timing. It's never great timing to deal with grief. But it happens, and so people will distract themselves with going back to work or doing other things and never allowing that grieving process, and it can trigger for them 6 months down the track where their body just kind of crumbles and they have to then deal with it. But some people have an amazing ability to tolerate with high amounts of emotional stress for years on end. Other people can only cope for days, so it's all very individual. So that's how emotions can get suppressed in our body, is either not understanding how to release them or how to express, or that they've been suppressed because of other life situations. Now, so one thing that I really encourage when patients come to see me is I love emotional release work, because sometimes, yes, you may know on the surface level, or you may resonate with some of the descriptions around what the emotions are held in different parts of the body. And it's very easy to try and intellectualize it, but sometimes we don't fully understand it, especially if we've had that emotion suppressed from a very young age. So it's almost a bit of a passive way, is that I love to help people emotionally release. And it's not necessarily that you have to think of that traumatic time when you were hurt. It's more about just shifting it. So emotions are energy, and you would have heard me talk about it last week, and I'll talk about it again this week in more detail, is the different forms of release. So when we're releasing, there's usually a physical release, which is things like shaking, trembling, movement, twitching. Then you've got a physiological release, which is the pees, the poos, the sweat, the vomit, and then an emotional release, which can be the crying, the laughter, the swearing, shouting, screaming. That's really common as well. And so I encourage that a lot in my patients, so I can know what's going on. I may not know the full story, but I know they need to release. They know they need to release. Sometimes it can be when you get this agitation, this frustration or whatever, and it could just be like, God, I wish I could scream. Do you scream? No, you don't. Okay, so let's do it in here. And people feel incredibly awkward, but some people are just ready to let rip. So it's quite well known in like when I'm treating in the clinic, that you can just let go and everyone around understands what's going on, and it's just that release. So it's finding a therapist who's really comfortable to hold space for you with emotions, because unfortunately not all therapists are comfortable with it. They feel awkward and they'll give you the tissues when you cry, or they will move away from an area. So maybe you're really a little bit ticklish and you push a therapist's hand away because you're like, oh no, that's really uncomfortable. But if you actually allow them and they feel comfortable to push you through that, then you might giggle your head off, or you might cry and just go, I don't even know why I'm crying, but it feels really good, and you just let it go. So finding a therapist who allows you to release on whatever level and doesn't make you intellectualize it. Emotions are energy and they just need shifting. So that's one aspect of how you can release. Sometimes you can be taught. I take people through a lot of anger release work, and helping them facilitate that process in between treatments so that it doesn't build up for them. Then what is it? So how do I do it? My method is using needles. I call it emotional needling. I love to get in there, and I imagine it's like popping those bubbles of emotions that are stuck in the tissues. And I get the twitches, I get the movement, I get the sweats, and you get the emotion. It's amazing, especially for those people who are really good at covering up their emotions, is you can't escape from a needle, or you're pretty protective if you can guard from a needle. The process of emotional release is also one that you have to allow. You have to be willing to participate in the process, and you have to encourage your body to go through with it. And some of you may not be ready to emotionally release on that level. So search around for practitioners. Come and see me. I'd love to see you and help you emotionally release. I love the screaming, the swearing, whatever needs to come out. It's all on, and I find it really satisfying. The next step is looking at the bigger picture. So when you are in pain and discomfort, it is very easy to just think short term, like how do I get through my day, which is absolutely fine. And this is where you need to have that external support. Or I highly recommend that you get that external support from someone who can look at you objectively. So if you look at something simple like an ankle sprain, most of us know that yes, you can recover from an ankle sprain and you need to do your rehab from it. But it's, as a therapist, like with most injuries, we can see the end result if you take our instructions, if you're willing to listen. And so we can kind of just carry you through that plan. And when we have a plan and we can follow it and we know that there's a positive end result, where usually, we get held accountable by a therapist, then there's a positive end result. So I lost my track a little bit there. But so that's on a physical level. So on the emotional level, what I often get my patients doing, especially the chronic ones, is once they're out of that discomfort and they can start to think a little bit clearer and they're not just, putting out the immediate fires, is look at the bigger picture. What do you actually want your life to look like? Because a lot of this chronic pain and discomfort is because people aren't living in line with their values. They're not enjoying their job. They aspire to do something else, but they don't know how to do it. They hate their relationships. They hate where they live. And for example, if you hate where you live, you need to move. And that's not always a really easy decision. I get that, but it's also not easy being in pain and discomfort. So you have to have, connect to that deeper why. I'm all about connecting people with their deeper sense of purpose. Some of you may know what your purpose is, but struggling to live that out and express it, and others of you are working out, what is your purpose. So bigger picture is, I say to people, what do you want your life to look like in 7 years? And if that's too much, think 2 to 3 years down the track, because I know that you can just totally change your life around in 7 years. It is so much time. Get clear on what your core values are so that you can start living more in line with your values. And there's a little freebie on my website. You can go and grab it and take yourself through the process. I've had people say it's really confronting and challenging, but much needed. And again, this is a great time to go through that process where most of us have had a lot of downtime and we're reflecting what we want to be doing with our life. And then, recognizing what your strengths are and how you want to be remembered. So I use death as a trigger for people. How do you want to be remembered? And, most of us will have quite a bit more time on this earth, and you can start to make those little changes in your life. So most people think, okay, I want that life in 7 years now, tomorrow, and it's unachievable for a lot of us. So you really want to just take those small steps. Know that you've got quite a few years to make those tiny changes, and this is where looking for that right support person who can mentor you, keep you accountable, and help you make those changes. An example would be a relationship. So I see a lot of people in toxic relationships. They know that they need to leave it, but they're always looking for a better time. I think a little bit like a baby, there's never a great time to have a baby. You just deal with it, you go with it. But with a relationship, I will often get people coming back in and I'll just check in, like, how's everything going? Still shit. Okay, right, maybe 5 times down the track, it's still really shit. Are you going to do anything about it? Let's give you a bit of a deadline when you're going to have that awkward chat, when you're going to start to give those ultimatums, or when you're going to start to take control of the situation and start making decisions to make changes. So I've rambled on a little bit, but I hope that gives you a bit of an idea. Now, there is a comment here. Hi, Becca. Oh, hi. This is saying hi. So I've talked about bunions for you. Now, so hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview. I am trying to help people really make this connection between physical discomfort and living the life you want. Remember, this is more for people who have got the chronic pain and discomfort. You've been through the mill, you've seen all the therapists. Hopefully some of them have taken you through the emotional aspect. If not, find someone who can facilitate that emotional aspect for you. There's people like life coaches out there. And know that you will transition through different practitioners. I get to a point with some people and then I hand them over to someone else to take them to that next level. And yeah, for me, physical pain, discomfort, I try and help people liberate themselves of physical pain, emotional pain, and it comes down to really living that life that's in line with your soul purpose and expressing it. So let me know if that makes sense. I hope I haven't confused you, and I better jump off because this is 15 minutes long now. Anyway, we'll touch base tomorrow. See you later, guys.